And it
Uh-oh, it's
looks like we're
live.
live. Awesome, man. It's another Wednesday. How's it
Right
feel,
on.
man?
Right on. You guys can see I've been doing fulfillment back here. So if you've got shirts on order, they probably went out this afternoon.
Yeah, right. And I see the orange number. Back there,
That's it.
239. So actually 238 and some change, but close enough.
238 days, 3 hours, 59 minutes. Not that I'm counting.
Right. It's almost savantish, like Rain Man-ish, you know what I mean? When that comes around. It's funny. I like that. All right, so we got Mr. John Wilburn is the first one here. Dart Sport, awesome. We got John, we got Dan, we got John, we got Auto Salvage, we got Dan with Plan Z. Oh yes, well that's going to be going soon. We're going to be working on that. How's everyone? Howdy, John, Dan, ASO, and Rich. We got Mr. Clint. We got Frankenstein 20, Colleen, Michael Schmidt, Mostly Old Parts and Rust, Fab Race Mod Repeat. I always get that wrong. Mostly Old Parts and Rust. We got Clint, Michael, Robert, and Embry. Oh, that's the first one I've seen there with them for a while. We got Clint, Mostly Old Parts, Frankenstein, Clint, Unity, Andy's in here, Jackie's in here. And we're moving right on down. And Clint and Colleen. Awesome. Well, we kind of greeted everyone. You know what I forgot to do real quick, though, was to get that stupid heart off the little Graham thing.
Yeah.
Man, I can almost do that real
quick. The way you really operate is when you're looking at the camera, but your head's looking at the camera, but your eyes are looking at fixing it and see if you can do it without them noticing it.
Oh,
I've done that before.
No. I'm telling you, I'm going to try to fix it as we go, but
I set my Friday live up and I got rid of that thing. I almost forgot because it's a new thing. So I always look at I got to go back and get rid of that heart.
Yeah. I remember you got to go to, what is it?
Customization. And live reactions.
Under content, right?
Yeah.
Content, live. Yep, here it is.
I see Tall Garage and Dean Stevenson and the One-Eyed Cat and Buff Del Campo sneaked in here.
Yep, and live reactions. Boom, and save that sucker.
Rick Salmon's in here. I think we should say Jackie, the baker of the finest cookies on earth, and her husband, Patrick.
Right? and that other person, right? And what was his name?
Yeah.
The driver of the cookies. He's the driver of the cookies.
The cookie delivery guy.
All right. I think we're good. I think there should be no heart in your way there, I believe. And it should be and saved. We're good. So yeah. So I did that while we were on the going on live there. So yeah.
Andy mentions that he got his swag today, and what I'll say about that is the mail was extremely slow over the holidays, but now it is back to normal. People are getting stuff fast.
Yeah,
that was one day from here to Charlotte. So
that's back good.
To normal on mail. That's a good thing.
Yeah, you know that. Speaking of getting things fast, next door they had like a garage sale some months back, and I bought an edger. And something I left behind in California that I'm going to rebuild out here is I had an alternator on one with jumper cables. So this way you could start it up, run an alternator, and it'll charge your battery in the pit. So I'm going to show people how to do that with a Chrysler alternator. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
I like that.
Yeah, and it works awesome too. Because remember, I didn't have like a trailer at the time. It was just a flatbed. So if it was gas powered, it was much better than having like a battery charger. This way you can just start it up. And, yeah. It's pretty cool. It works awesome. See, yeah, it's kind of a semi-tech. What do we got going on here? Semi-tech, what are all companies are owned by with TCI parent company? So he's asking what companies are involved?
Yes. What comes under the TCI umbrella?
Well, actually, believe it or not, TCI is actually under another umbrella, which is the Edelbrock Corporation, the Edelbrock Group. So basically there's Edelbrock, there's Comp, there's TCI, there's Fast, Russell, and Lunati as of right now. Those are all under the Edelbrock group. So yeah, TCI is a good company to Oh, it's funny. I'm actually on the Edelbrock website, and the bell housing I made is right there too. That's awesome. So I'm on the webpage. Yay! Oh, look at this. Did you see this? She just made
I did see that. I did see that.
yeah, right, right.
Yeah, I'm
Patrick is
beginning
just
to think that there are two categories of people: people who got the cookies before they were gone, and people who heard about them and regretted it, and
yeah.
are now seeking the cookies out next year.
I gotta say though, and this is the truth. I think that we should have a cookie off because my wife has been doing pretty good on some of these cookies too. Um, it's they're two different realms, but I
Mhm.
gotta tell you. So I'm gonna bring some cookies up that the wifey makes, and they're good.
I bet my mom would be in for such a thing. She has a cookie that's often requested. She's been making for, I think it's her mother's recipe.
We
So
should
who
do a
knows?
cookie
We
drag
might.
race.
My mom might be interested in that throwdown. She was in the chat earlier, so
Yeah, we should do like a cookie drag race, at the No Name Nationals, right? Hey, man, it is Missouri, right? And
that's
there
right.
are things that are legal now in Missouri, so cookies might be welcome for that, especially with this group of people. It'd be
I was
awesome.
gonna say, Don kind of beat me to it. I'll be happy to be a taste tester. Yeah, you'll really be happy depending on what's in the cookies.
Right. Lucky you're at the track for 3 days, right? Oh yeah.
This is such a
Oh
fun crowd. I just love the Wednesday night crowd.
yeah, yeah. So as we got some people in here now, most of the people that are in here are mostly the no name national guys, so which is good for this. So uh what me and John have been talking about is that obviously at the end of the month we're going to be bringing out the rules. And the rules for Monkey Bike, what we're going to do is instead of dropping them on his, the very last day just happens to be the 31st, which is a Wednesday, which happens to be Tech Talk Live.
Mhm.
So next Wednesday, what we're going to do is we're going to do all the rules for the Monkey Bike, and we're going to drop them right here on this channel for that. So it's going to be awesome. So be here next
It'll
week
be a
definitely for
different
that.
topic of tech, but it is all under that umbrella of tech.
It is, and in a former life, I used to ride motorcycles. I did it, District 37, District 38. I did Hare and Hound series, scrambles. So I've done a lot of riding. In my more advanced age, of 49 now, yeah, just 4 days ago turned 49,
One
and
from 50, as I remind him.
yeah, 1 from 50. Well, technically, 50 is not really the number because it's a zero, it's a placeholder. So 51 is when you actually turn 50. But who's counting for that, right? And we're not splitting hairs here. So yeah, we're gonna make sure that we're gonna have fun. So we're gonna make sure it's gonna be fun and all inclusive. So yeah, we're working on that. Tall garage. So I had an idea. Take a 4x4 T case with a Honda Inline coupler in the front, drive shaft with this make, a simple all-wheel drive setup. Thoughts for
Well, the first thought that I have there is what kind of viscous coupler are we talking about? Because what the CRV has, which is what I have, and I didn't
hmm
even know this for years, it has an electromagnetic clutch at the front of the rear differential.
hmm
So your pinion gear is not just straight through where it bolts
that's
from the
right.
yoke at the drive shaft and then goes through, and then you have the head of the pinion gear engages the ring. There's actually a clutch that disengages in there. And so when the computer sees a differential in speed between the front and rear wheels, it engages the clutch and gives you all-wheel drive.
Yeah.
Um, what I understand, a Subaru has a true viscous coupler that slips all the time, kind of like a torque converter, except it's not increasing torque. It's just there to use the shear resistance of the fluid like a true coupler.
Yeah, and it's more like a
It should
60/40.
work. I just don't know how
Yeah.
heavy it would be depending on your application.
Yeah. And there's a lot of people who are running this Honda's type of thing for like drag racing, like in Civics.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, for drag racing. And what they do is they take out that viscous coupler and they make it a direct drive at that point. So then it becomes a true, like, say, I'm going to use the word
Mhm.
all-wheel drive, but it's a true four-wheel
Yeah.
drive then at that point.
Yeah.
So it is done, but I can tell you right now, maybe 7 years ago, this would have been super cheap to do. Now everybody's looking for this for the Hondas that were they got the K series type of deal. Um, So it might be a little bit more expensive nowadays, but it's really simple setup.
So I guess I'm wondering what Ken wants to do it in. So is it so you can use a transmission that will go behind your inline 306?
Oh,
Because that
okay.
would probably be the simple way. So it's probably not a four-wheel drive truck application,
Oh, I see
but
what he's doing.
but because it has an engine that traditionally came in a truck, it will be
Hmm.
a simple way to get the transfer case. I'm guessing, but Ken can tell us.
Yeah, at that point, wouldn't like something like for a Ford Ranger be a little more robust? Because the torque on that thing's going to be a lot. That 300.
Well, but the thing is, the viscous coupler will let you drive it all the time all-wheel drive on the street,
Yeah,
whereas the Ranger still has a transfer case you have to take out
yeah, yeah. No,
to
no, no. I
drive.
get that. Yeah,
The setup I would think you wouldn't want would be one of those ridiculous center differential setups like a tempo
yeah,
head. I was
yeah,
in my I can't remember when exactly it was, but when I was in auto tech school, we heard about a guy that did some kind of test on his vehicle in the shop where he jacked up one wheel and was letting it idle. And somehow, you know how when your differential, when you spin one wheel, um, you're multiplying speed to it, right?
yes.
Because of the spiders.
Yep.
Well, the center differential will do that too. So you have an exponential effect of multiplying it twice if it's in four-wheel drive and it winds up sending power to one wheel through that center differential.
Oh, wow.
And this guy grenaded a tire because the wheel speed got so high.
I bet.
And he was
Yeah,
on a truck and it sheared the dead side off and threw the tire carcass up into the well. They showed us pictures of it, but it was like the warning of why you don't do this.
yeah, yeah.
And I've always felt weird about the whole center differential thing. And the only thing I've ever worked on that had one, I think, was the Ford Tempo all-wheel drive. So
So, do you see this? Get out your little book.
yep,
There's already
I,
$100
I
up
will
on
put
that.
it in the book right now.
Yeah. So there you go.
I
So
got to do it
awesome.
right now. So I got you, Chris, going in the book.
So Speed Oasis is going to put up $100 for the monkey bike purse. That's
Right
awesome.
on.
That's an
Thank you.
awesome, awesome job. I like that. Thank you. Oh, and this is the next company I was going to talk about was the AMC. Remember the AMC Eagle? Like the
Mm-hmm.
very first
I
like
do.
crossover. They had a viscous clutch on the front too. Um, you know that in this where I live in Quillerville here, everything is like the SUV crossover hell here.
Right.
And they all drive these like Lexus. They look like a car with big tires. They're kind of raised up. It still looks like a car. How cool would it be to have an AMC Eagle, which was the predecessor to all those from the 70s,
Right.
and drive around with that all-wheel drive? And yeah, that would be
I
cool.
like those. I
Yeah,
think they're great. I thought they were cool.
yeah. Even back then, yeah. I just didn't like the anemic engines that they had at that time. At the ones that I saw, they all had the straight sixes in them.
But I kind of like that just because I like the Jeep 258.
Oh yeah,
You know,
yeah.
so it's like I have a reason to like that engine. In other words, I didn't just say, "Hey, I like the performance." What engine is that? I like that engine in spite of the performance.
Yeah.
Kind of like I like the VW based trike because I like Volkswagens. So
Yes.
it's not like,
Right.
hey, this is the best way to build a trike. What's powered it? No, no one would ever say that about a VW trike.
What's funny is that remember last week we were talking about Volkswagens quite a bit.
Yes.
One of our listeners happens to work for Driven Oils. Think about that, Driven
Ah,
Oils, right?
cool.
And we talk a lot because we get a lot of oil from them. Just he happens to be like a VW guy too, like pull
Uh,
your chest open, VW right on the chest kind of guy.
oh,
So
wow.
so we made his day. He was like, people were talking about Volkswagens. He was just flying the VW flag. So
Yeah.
yeah, we,
Oh,
we
yeah.
got a pat on the back. So I just thought I would let you know that. Just thinking out loud. Someone was big Billy out of the hospital for 3 weeks. Huh.
Wow. You know
Awesome.
what? It's good to see you. I
Yes.
miss seeing you in the chats. So
Yeah.
glad
Good
you
to have you
made it.
back.
Glad you made it past that.
Yeah. When exactly, if he wants to talk, what was it? Was he sick or something? Or
I don't know, but I remember seeing
yeah,
him in the chats and
yeah. And then he was
haven't seen
gone.
you in a
Yeah,
while. So glad you're
yeah,
here.
yeah. Glad you're out, man. I'm glad everyone's back. And yeah, right here, the AMX, the
Yes.
Spirit. Yeah,
Yes.
right. Yeah. And One Eyed Cat, you're absolutely right. Seems monkey bike is going to be a big thing this year. That's the whole point. This was supposed to be fun.
Yeah.
And that's what we're going to try to make it. So I'm not giving away anything, no hints, no nothing. I'm just telling you it's going to be fun. That's the whole point of this.
Fun. So everybody knows I got my three things the No Name Nationals has to be: fun, safe, pay for itself. If it does that, we're
That's
good.
right. Oh, and you forgot the fourth one. It takes a year to prepare for
There's no off season. There's no off. It's like the odometer. It just keeps rolling right past.
right. I think the orange is mostly for you in the background.
Actually, I'll show you. So I just opened a new ream of it.
Oh, look at that.
It is a special color, and it was hard to match this up. So I worked in an old office building that was built in the 1880s, and the real estate firm that I worked for way back in the day had been in there since the 60s, and they had this ancient ream of this stuff sitting in the attic, and I found it cleaning out about 15 years ago. And so I said, I don't know what in the world I'm ever going to use that ream of orange paper for. And then years later, I had this idea, and I found that ream of paper. I said, that's it. Right. So that ream lasted 2 years, because I get about 500 sheets is about 2 years. Right. Because we don't obviously do 365 of these. So when I ran out, I said, oh man, I know where it came from. I had to match it up. So I went to the oldest office supply place in the universe. And sure enough, we matched that exact ream. So we're good now.
Yeah. That's awesome. And my thank you for all the birthday wishes. I was kind of reading through here. So I'm sorry I skipped a couple, but my thing updated. So for my birthday, if you're not watching some of my stuff, I've only been posting shorts lately just because I took a little break, just having some fun. I went out and got myself an exhaust for the desert tarts. So yeah, I went out and got now people call them boom tubes. You can. But this is not really a boom tube because it's not necessarily the big flat thin ones. This is more of like a side exit. It's a NASCAR exhaust. It comes from a couple different ones, but it has DG right on it. So it was a Dr. Gas version. So that would have placed it 95 to 98 in that range. And it was from a yes, just like that. There you go.
That is it.
Yeah. And so that's the one. And that so it was a like a high-speed oval type of one. So I'm excited about it. Now it's big. It's 3.5-inch exhaust. So it's gonna be hard to tuck it all up in there, but it's gonna be awesome. So yep, I'm looking for that. Big Belly Racing. He's saying Shane still cam for 343. Huh?
Steel cam for 343.
I don't know. Sometimes I'm slow with all that stuff. I don't know, man.
Can you clarify just a little bit for us?
Yeah. Oh, Michael Schmidt. You know what's funny is I'm actually making this video right now as we speak. So engines balancing, anybody know if balancing an inline engine is any different than a V8? Yes, it is. Are rods and cranks and pistons balanced separately or together? Okay, so there's a couple different ways to do it. One, you can do the rods, but individually, big end, little end, then do the pistons, so on and so forth. On this engine that I'm going to be doing it on, it's on a slant 6, so they're already pressed together. So I'm going to be doing it with technically the big end, which is going to be the on the crank, and then the little end, which is going to have the piston on it. I'm going to balance it with that. So yeah, I'm just going to balance them all within half a gram and call it good, or actually 1/10 of a gram, might as well. But yeah, so you can balance it however you want to, as long as they weigh out. Make sure it's clean. And then I did a little video on engine building, my playlist on how to do the pistons, where to cut it, on the pistons. But since I'm going to be doing them together, I'm going to be taking it out from the pin inside the pinhole. So that way you can just grind it out, and that's how I'm going to take out some of the weight on it. But it's a slant 6, so it's not going to really RPM all that crazy. But it is slightly different because in the V8 engine, you're going to need something called bob weight, where you're going to be taking half of one, the big end, this end, and then balancing it out, because as one's coming down, it's coming back up, and then you balance the crankshaft accordingly. But on basically on an inline six, you just get a neutral balance on the crankshaft, and then you just balance all of the rods, evenly with each other, because it's inline six has the first and second waves are basically zero, so it's a perfect balance. So it's a really good engine. That's why the slant sixes run so smooth. I have DG Dollar General, right? Oh, I think he's saying he still needs a cam for his 343.
I guess you have an AMC.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, like a Marlin or something, or Matador.
Yeah, sure. Why not?
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, I need to build another AMC. They're really cool engines. Yeah, I always tripped out on how the distributor kind of came out to the front. And then I put a DUI, maybe the Davis Unified Ignition on one. Right. So it was like this big honking thing. It looks me out.
I like Jay Malone's comment. Where else besides this channel would that get said? I've been on a Bricklin kick lately.
Right.
Bricklin.
Oh, here's another thing you'll find funny that you only hear on this channel. We're going to do an Oak Island update. They still haven't found anything. The caisson is down. They've insulated it, and they only did a 3-fer. If you don't understand what a 3-fer is,
yes.
It's where they find something, and then could it be this? Could it be this? Could it be this? They only got a 3-fer. The highest they've ever got was a 5-fer, and that was what we're talking about right now. Still nothing, and that's that. So there's your Oak Island update. It's been 12 years. I was so excited. I haven't found crap.
Yeah, we were cracking up pretty hard the car at PRI because Shane was explaining this to us. What a 4-fer. I think how it came up was we were talking with somebody and the guy did that. And then Shane said, yeah, that was a 4-fer. We're like, what's a 4-fer? Then he explains it to us.
Yeah. It's the truth. Watch it. You'll see what I'm talking about.
Right.
They took a setup, right, on how something works. They ran the exact same setup for 12 years. And it's just, sometimes it's just like, oh my, come on, man, try something a little different. Shane, what's your email? It is slantdailygarage@yahoo.com. That's slantdailygarage@yahoo.com. Send it there. Or you can send it to spolito@edelbrock.com. Either one. Now, remember, I'm not into sales or anything like that. So I'll do what I can. A little busy right now because we're trying to get some all the products that were at SEMA and PRI. We're still trying to get them, out by first quarter. We've got a few things on that still need to be finished up as far as like, casting, because this is the very first thing that bell housing is the very first thing that Edelbrock's casting for TCI. So it's quite groundbreaking. So it's awesome.
I want to hear the Oak Island guys authenticate the sign back here. On cosmic orange paper and Berlin Sans font, and 24 pound.
That's the truth, man. It's so funny. Oh, right. Yes. Spoiler alert, they found wood.
The NSP Custom Cars guys are in the house, by the way.
we got Mr. Wilson in here. He is correct. They found wood. Oh, that's funny. That is funny. Mr. Wilson has a video up that I was going to reference it for Hardcore Tech. But someone mentioned in here a little while back about difference between wideband and narrowband, just, as far as O2 sensors. And I was looking for a video because I was going to talk about it and reference it. But, lo and behold, Muscle Car Solutions has got probably one of the best explaining and easiest and shortest videos. So I'm going to reference that when we get up here. But I just wanted to make sure that, because I do have a few haters. Oh, do I have a few haters? They don't like me. They don't like the fact that I can, for whatever reason, I don't know what it is, but they just don't like me. So if I get a number wrong, like a point, whatever number wrong, they let you know about it. So I didn't want to answer the question until I knew the exact numbers of the voltages. And I couldn't remember if it was 0 to 1 or 0 to 1.5, but it's actually 0 to 1 and then 0 to 5 volts for the wideband. So I just couldn't remember that.
Something worth having a big war about.
Right. Well, I'm telling you, man, some people just have nothing else to do but
they start the day saying that guy's going to be wrong. Now let's figure out how.
Yeah, right.
Clayton's Toolbox has a great question at 722, and I'd love to hear your take. And I'd kind of like to hear Andy Wood's 2 cents if he's in
Sure.
the comments.
Okay. All things being equal, turnaround versus high rise single plane intakes. How much of an improvement will turnaround normally provide? Basically, it's train tracks. It literally will train track. It's just better everywhere. Obviously, there's different types of tunnel rams, but typically, anything that's within reason. I mean, if it's a stupid tunnel ram where it's a 14-inch whatever, just some ridiculous thing. But if it's within reason, usually a tunnel ram will just make train tracks. It will just be that much improves throughout the whole thing. And where you're really going to see it mostly is, believe it or not, is in the torque. You're going to see the torque. It just where it comes in, you're going to see so much more torque there. And this is one of those things I wish we had a third one here. We could get Mr. Andy on here and get his. But usually I've seen him on the dynos every single time. It's always train tracks. It just makes better.
We've got a lot of tunnel ram folks in this community, but one thing, I don't know if Andy stepped away, but one thing I'll say is like the intake on the Honda CRV that I drive is a tunnel ram if you look at it.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of these small 4-cylinder cars have tunnel rams. You think about it, they want the torque everywhere, and they get it that way.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a long runner type of deal too on those because they want the torque down low. And then the short runner will carry the RPM out, but it just makes the torque at a higher RPM at a different level. So,
right.
And he's asking, what about the Holley high ram versus the old? Here's the thing, though, is I've never personally have ever tested the Holley high ram, so I have very little information on this.
You have to go back a few years, but if you go to the Unity Motorsports Garage channel, there is a back-to-back chassis dyno test on his 393-inch Windsor with, I believe it's an Edelbrock cast intake and a Holley high ram back-to-back.
Okay.
So you can see that test. In fact, it's the engine that piston came out of.
Oh. Did I lose you? Oh, there we're back. Okay, that was weird. She says, "What, you don't like my 14-inch long runners on my kegger?" Right. Yeah, that's as far as, I'm sorry, Clayton, I don't know that one offhand. Probably speaking of, here we go. Speaking of intakes, anybody ever use a cross ram intake on Chevy? Had a chance to get one on my boat way back when it didn't want to spend 125. How should have spent the 125? I actually have. I put a cross ram on a it was like a 302 Chevy where it was a higher RPM type of deal, and it was more of a show car, but man, did it scream. I never got it on the dyno because the guy sold the car before I actually got it onto my chassis dyno. It looked cool, and it RPM'd. It really worked well, and it definitely went below the hood, and it was nice looking. Other than that, unfortunately, I don't have numbers. Right here, see. I'm happy with the 2+4 Offenhauser. I want to keep it under the hood, right? That was the whole thing. Might be a cheap church.
I like that 38 POS race and talk about starting a keyboard war. It takes nothing to start a keyboard war.
Yeah, right. You just have to. All I have to do is be breathing.
That's right. That's all it takes.
Just breathing. There's. What's funny too is that you'll see these guys and you'll go to their webpage or their YouTube channel. They've got like 2 subscribers.
Right.
Him and his
no
mom,
videos.
Right?
No videos ever.
It's right. Him and his mom, right? And he's in the basement type thing. So
they wouldn't subject themselves to what they do us, so they won't put out a video like that. But we have the fine community here.
Yeah. So here he's basically telling it just like that. Not all tunnel rams are created equal. Like I was saying, you gotta. The older tunnel rams make great street intakes today. The new high rams are worth about 25 over old versions, which is right. It literally will train track. Like I was saying, it just, you put it on there and it's just instant power all the way across. And it's really amazing. And I'm definitely fly the tunnel ram mafia. I love them. I've always had them. love them. I actually had one on my jet boat for a very long time, and it was just impressed me. It always worked. Oh, my keyboard is a flintlock. That's a good one. I like that. I like that. Oh man. Everyone else feeling today's the very first day we're really it's like 60 degrees out. So last week at this exact time it was 19 outside.
Yeah,
So
the snow went away overnight.
overnight. And I
Oh,
told the
yeah.
kids that. I said, Monday we went back to work and it was frozen. There was ice everywhere. And I said, tomorrow it's raining tonight. So by the time we wake up on Tuesday, there'll be no snow. And literally it was gone. Yeah, it was gone. It was nice. 125 bucks, man. I gotta go back to this. 125 bucks. You know what that thing's worth now?
I have no idea because with what prices have done on everything in the last few years, I don't keep up with anything.
Yeah. People are there was somebody who sold an A body. I think it was a Duster or something like that. At Mecum, it was like 140,000 or some ridiculous number. And did you see that? Somebody sold.
I heard about it.
Yeah.
I
So
read about it.
yeah. So people are like, how can you drive your cars like they send you private messages. These things are worth 100,000 bucks. I'm like, look, man, these were the Honda Civics of their day.
That's right.
And I treat it just like that. I mean, to me, I want to drive them and enjoy them. And if they survive, then they go down to the kids. That's the whole point of it.
There's something about just all the little things. There's something about when you used to open a car door and you put your thumb on the chrome button and you held the handle and you took the slack out of it and you pushed it in and you heard about 3 or 4 clicking sounds as all the linkage went through its thing.
All right.
And then you would hear everything in concert work when the door shut.
That's right.
And it just felt and sounded so real. And they've taken all of that kind of little things of character out of cars.
Yeah.
And I miss all that. And that's why I like older dailies.
Yes, I agree. If I can get mine to stop leaking as much as it does, I'll be driving it during the rain. Right now it's just hard because I had a windshield put into it before I left with a new gasket. Well, in California that was fine. Here, we get like 58 inches of rain, a year. That's quite a bit more than 10, so.
This devil's exactly right. When the button's stuck, we smack the top of it. That's right.
Yes, exactly. Yep. Hold it down, click, and it pops right back out.
While we're talking about tunnel rams, I'll just mention this because Andy's in here. His new shirt is the Tunnel Ram Mafia tee.
There you go.
And so this is Andy's shirt, and it's printed by another guy in our community, Tony's Hot Rod Garage, Gunslinger Graphics. But so anyway, it's not just a topic of discussion. I mean, Andy lives the lifestyle.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I'm actually physically designing mine right now for a Gen 3 Hemi. So carbureted. So yeah, it's going to be I'll be part of that group. It's going to be a little old, little new type thing. So yeah, but that shirt looks awesome. I'm definitely going to have to get one on there, and that way, you show up. It might as well be mandatory. If you're running that, you have to wear the shirt. At the No Name Nationals.
I just like to say that because so many cool things originate in this community.
Yeah. Oh, hey, look at this.
Yep, that's shirt number 1. That's the first shirt ever made.
Then I have to buy 500.
That's right. That's right.
If you don't catch the joke, go back and watch. But
yeah.
Oh.
Whenever we get on trans breaks, y'all can remind us some more.
Yeah. Another thing cool about certain vehicles had a distinctive door closing sound. Yes, all my A bodies, they have it because they have that spring on it, so it has, even no matter how much you put it on, it has a whoop sound to it, so yes.
Older cars with the material they had in the seats, like the horsehair and the type of paper products and such they used before we had everything with all these plastics and plasticizers, they smelled different too.
Yeah,
everything was different. I just missed that.
Did you say Gen 3 Hemi Tunnel Ram? Drool. Yes, I am actually designing my own right now. It's going to be the lower end. And now I'm doing it for myself. So this is not an Edelbrock thing. This is actually for myself. But I'm going to make it so I can either put a top on it for tunnel ram, like we have those tops, so it'll be a dual carb, a single carb, or one of the fast pieces. So that way I can always just put one of our fast on it with 102 millimeter throttle body up front. So it'll do anything. I'm also going to put some bungs in it too. I'm going to have two injector bungs on it on the side. So if you decide to go fuel injection, you have two things for it. Another thing too is that those bungs can also be used for a fogger system. So it's going to have everything involved in it. Because I'm a street racer, I'm going to have bungs put on the inside too, in case you want to hide your NO system into O system.
Now, so you had mentioned after PRI when you were talking about the 3D print process for like the bell housing.
Yep.
Is that going to be the process for that intake, or?
Yeah. We're gonna, basically what we're doing is you 3D print the mold, right? So before, remember when you'd have to make a mold, so you would have to get a casting, put it into clay or whatever material, pack it down, and then you split it apart and you have a mold. You have a void, and that's how you pour it in. What the 3D print does now is actually 3D prints the bottom, 3D prints the top, so that way you can make changes on the fly. So you can figure out how you want to do this, and you can knock those things out in like a couple hours.
Yeah,
So
all
you
the
can,
voids and everything.
yeah, exactly. So you put it together, you pour the aluminum in it, and you're good to go. So this is something, once I get it done, I send it to them in less than a day and a half. You'll have a product. Basically it's a something that still needs to be machined, but and you can get it within I believe it's 30 thousandths of tolerance. So it's pretty precise, and that's 3D print. That's pouring the mold, pulling it out within 30 thousandths. So
Which
pretty
is
good.
way better than factory, say, head and intake castings of the 70s.
Yeah, right, right, exactly.
Andy says there, you don't get this kind of information anywhere else, folks. Well, thank you.
No.
Coming from Andy, that is a high compliment.
Yeah, right. Well, thank you, man. But yeah, that's and I've been doing my due diligence on learning about taper and runner design. So I've been using a lot of I forget the number. I think it's 7085, I believe, at the top of my head. It's a big block Chevrolet tunnel ram. And I'm loosely using those specs because that's one of the latest ones that we just did. It basically just blew all our predictions out of the water. I hope I got that number right. But I'm using that type of design to do this with. So it's going to be really cool. I'm very excited about it. Yep. I wish I had a cross ram with 4 carbs. I'd run it just to piss people off. There was a guy that was it on a Pontiac or an Oldsmobile. I saw an old picture of one in like an old hot rod magazine. Remember, it was like a cross ram and it had 4 carbs on it.
I think I've seen something like that. Come to think of it, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Heavens Mopar saying, I love to put an off hazard tunnel ram I have on my Charger maybe next year. Well, no, 2024, this year.
Hey, Scott, just piece at a time. So Scott's he's gonna make it. Scott, is the Charger gonna be a convertible, or is it gonna be a hard top, or one way or the other?
Oh, 429 toward the fund. I'll give you back 3 pennies. 426.
Andy was so
That's awesome.
hardcore about wanting a 429-inch displacement small block that
Yep.
I believe he had his block torque plate honed another 5 thousandths just
Good
to
man.
get an exact 429.
Good man.
That's hardcore. I like
Yep.
that.
Yeah, if mine has to have any type of overbore on it, my 392, because I like the Gen 1 Hemi personally. So if the 392 doesn't work out with my 6.4 that's going in my Cookie Monster, then it's going to go 426. So yes, I feel you. It's got to be exactly, 425.9. It's got to be there. So yes, I feel you. A guy made one for a big block Mopar.
Hmm.
Huh.
That'd be interesting.
Yeah.
If you have a picture of that in one email to me, I'll put it up.
There was a Mopar crossarm with four barrels. I think it was Mickey Thompson deal.
I could see Mickey Thompson doing something like that.
Yeah.
I can't even think what all he would have innovated if he'd lived longer.
Right?
That guy
Yep.
was nonstop.
Yeah. That was a metric, Andy. Oh, by the way, thanks, Andy, if I didn't get to say it. So thank you for that. I appreciate it. Keeps the lights on. I don't want to touch it because
That's it.
It keeps the lights on.
That's it. Gotta have
them. Yep. Oh man. What another day. See what we got.
I've corrupted Professor P about him liking that expression, keeps the lights on, and going full John Wilburn with the zoom.
I love it. Well, because it's true, it keeps the lights on. And you said it. I one time donated, and you're like, dude, it keeps the lights on. Thanks. And I'm like, you know what? He's right. That's the way to do it. If your friends are in a chat, boom, throw a little cash his way.
The YouTube money from my channel, actually, I stick it in the No Name Nationals General. So, because that's, I don't do that for a career. I do it for fun for you guys. So it's community reinvestment. But literally, if you send a super chat, the only lights it's keeping on might be the light plants at the No Name Nationals. But yes, it could literally be keeping the lights on that way.
Yeah. Hey, Boring Bills made it in. Awesome. Thanks. Good evening.
Thank you, Boring Builds.
Yeah. Boring. Everyone's saying hi to Boring. So I'll go ahead and go with this one. I was talking to Mr. Wilburn about this. Somebody was asking me a little while back, and you can stop me at any time, John, on this if a question comes in. About where did I get this recipe from for the small block Mopar, the 360 Magnum, and how did I come up with it? Well, I'll make this really short. Back in the day, I'm not sure the exact year, 2004, 2005, but Chrysler came out with these 300 horse 360 Magnums and a 380 horse Magnum. My buddy bought the 380 horse. We put it on a dyno, made like 412. And it made a ton of torque, like 420 or 430. He wanted a little bit more out of it. So we took the cam out of it. And if I remember correctly, the cam, I have my old cam specs here. Duration at 50 was 230, 234. It was on a 112 LSA installed on a 108 ICL. 501, 513, and then a few other little things. And it it was 288 degrees, 292 advertised duration, and he had a single plane manifold on it. Now, most people think going to a dual plane would actually go the other direction, but I got to tell you, I had really good luck up to that point with the dual planes. So when we took it apart, and we took the heads down and we just got them 202s, and these actually had the Engine Quest heads on them. So we got 202 valve put into it, put a dual plane on it. We bumped the compression up. I believe it was 9-1. We went to 9.5 to 1 because he wanted to keep the cast iron heads. And then the camshaft was what's the camshaft I put in these damn things? Can't remember off the top of my head. It is 232, 245 on a 108. Now, the reason why I went such a big split on this is I wanted this thing to run out the back door so it would have a little bit more overrun, because these things would hit a wall. With a 230, 234 duration at 50, it just would hit a wall. I ran it a much bigger duration on the exhaust, so you had plenty of overrun on it, and it just wouldn't fall off nearly as fast. I tightened up the LSA so I could get a little bit more of that advantage out of it, and that's where really all the power really came from, was those two combinations. And contrary to a lot of popular belief on this setup, it likes the 650 double pumper better than the 750 for all around streetability. I should say that. It as far as peak torque and horsepower, the difference was minimal. It was way more drivable. The bottom end on the 650 was much better. Now, obviously, you'd make a little bit more peak horsepower with the 750, but it was only like the last 1500 RPM. The 750 made more power. So the 650 just made power all the way across. So that, in a nutshell, is really how I came up with it. And then how we came up with the next one, which was the 460 horse, is he got the Edelbrock aluminum heads. And literally all we did was take those heads off, put those heads on, took it back down to the dyno, and we made on that one, let's see here, make sure I get this right. No, that's the Engine Quest. So the Engine Quest one made 454 horsepower, 6,000, 461 foot-pounds of torque at 4,500. And then let me get the other one out up here. This one made 471 foot-pounds of torque at 4,650 and 462 at 6,200 RPM. And I believe that just contributed to the fact that you just went to a better flowing head with the, literally everything was the same. And it went to 10.5 to 1 compression because the chamber was much smaller on the Magnum head. So it raised the compression another point. Other than that, all things being equal, it was literally a bolt off, bolt on, put back on, and we collected that. So we raised it, it was like 412. So we made like basically another 50 horsepower with doing those things. So yeah, it was pretty good. So that's how I came up with it. And it wasn't just like that was just one and that was a recipe. Once he started driving that thing around, beating people, people started like, hey, I want to do the same thing. So then that's when we started getting into pulling the Magnum engines, because right at the early 2000s, right when the Hemi was coming in, so people were taking those Magnums, throwing one away. And so they were basically just core fodder. You can get it for like, $200 at the wrecking yard, and it was still a running engine. So then with these parts, you could spend another, at that time, $2,500, I believe is what it was, or something. And then you could have an engine that made just under, just over 450 horse, with junkyard parts, which you really wouldn't even have to touch the bottom end unless you ran nitrous to it. Then you had to open up the gap on the ring. But other than that, you could just leave it just.
That's a great recipe. Still a great recipe.
Yeah, it works awesome. Yeah, that's why I throw it out there. It's not like I'm trying to make money on it. Anyone can use it. You ask for it, I'll send it to you. Now, remember, you're not going to just throw these parts at it and make these numbers. There's a lot of other little tricks in there. Oil flow, bearing clearances, blueprinting, so on and so forth. But the combination of parts done correctly, it will get very close to that within, probably 10 or 12% either direction.
This is the intake that Max Wedge Dick Dastardly.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, exactly as described.
Wow.
And also, there's a great question from Rich MC at 742.
Okay. Right here. Hey, have you done a video on how to set distributor timing? Embarrassing, I've never done it before. We'll need to do it soon. Yes, I just did it on one of my last ones. It's on a slant 6, but it doesn't matter. It really has no big deal. I show you how to stab it, how to set the crankshaft for 10 degrees before, how to stab it with anything that's a magnetic type of pickup or a Hall effect. It really doesn't matter at that point. So that way, when you stab it and you put it there, you line it up. And usually when you start it, you're within a couple degrees. So you're not hunting, all over the place and where to stab it, so you need to know that if you line up the dots, you're going to be 180 out almost every single time. You gotta have it so that way, if you want to get on number 1, you want the 1 dot up and the cam dot up. So line up the dots, give the crankshaft 360 degrees, which will give the distributor, the cam, 180. So both dots are facing up, then stab number 1. That's how you know it's number 1. So yes, Rich, and if you have any other questions, you can slantdailygarage@yahoo.com. But I have a video up right now. Let me see if I can find it real quick. I just posted it right here. This is it.
No matter how far you ever get timing out, there are videos on YouTube that will make you feel so much better about your attempts. But come in here, you'll get the right info to start with. So
yeah. This shows you too how to curve it. How to, if you want to get really deep into it, it shows you how to do all that too. Here we go. There's that. And I'm going to post this over here. So here we go. Here's a link to it. That video right there. So you can click on that and it shows you how to stab it and go from there. Mostly all parts and rest is asking, have you seen the 402 crate? They sold stock bore 360 4-inch stroker crank, all from Mopar. No, I haven't seen those. No,
Hey,
I didn't. That sounds great. I do remember them. That was like when those cranks were like $300. Remember when they had the cast
yep,
crank 4-inch? But
$299 special.
yeah, right.
Yep.
Let's see what else we got going back down. Shane, is that still a roller cam for the Magnum? Yes, it's a hydraulic roller. In fact, it was technically a regrind from the original, but yeah, it's got a low lift on it too. It's because you're running a 1.6 rock arm on the Magnum. You can even get a 1.7 if you wanted, but it's 232, 245 on the 108 with a 343 intake valve lift and a 341. And the reason for that is because I'm still using the dog bones on it. So anytime you get over 340 of lift at the lifter, it tends to move that dog bone. So 340 is about the number. Obviously, it depends on base circle and there's many other things, but I've just come to find out that on those blocks, especially with the relief that's at the top of those blocks, as far as where the lifter's at, they have a very generous recess in there. So sometimes you can uncover that if you go too much as far as the lifter lift. So I just make it up in rock arm ratio. And with the Magnums, it's cheap because you can usually use a GM rock arm, so it's pretty cheap.
That question about the $299 cast crank reminds me. So one thing on this channel you'll see is, and a lot of the young people don't remember any of this kind of craziness, but I remember a build for a small block Mopar Stroker where somebody took a 318 steel crank, a forged 318 truck crank, 318.3,
Mm-hmm.
and they ground it down. They welded it up so they could cut the journal to make a stroker out of it, and they used slant 6 rods. And they did all of that to get something like 379 cubic inches,
Wow.
which is absolutely insane today. But back then, when you didn't have all of these cheap stroker cranks, people did stuff like that. So
Yeah.
while the process itself is not particularly valuable today, the knowledge of how and why is. And so what you're watching right now, this Tech Talk Wednesday, is where we keep stuff like that alive.
Yeah.
And you hear a lot more stuff like that. I'm just an interim. I'm the interim guest, but Dallas really gets in the weeds with that kind of stuff, and it's great knowledge.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Both Dallas and I grew up racing very poor. So we had to make do with what we could. And I was never the fastest guy, and I knew that, but I was definitely mid, street racer as far as mid pack, let's call it. And I was able to do all this stuff on basically wrecking yard engines and 250 shot of nitrous. And that was that. And I was able to uh, sustain pretty good. And obviously there was a point where they just got super fast. And then, I got arrested for street racing. So there's that too. Had to work for the police department, build their race cars for a few years to get my name cleared. So yeah, there's all that too. So I taught the chief of police of San Diego how to drag race. How cool is that?
that is cool. That's
Yeah.
pretty neat.
And he did this thing called the Chief's Challenge. And I taught, like, once again, the chief of police how to drag race. And all the chiefs from around came by to race at this track. It was at Qualcomm, which was like Jack Murphy Stadium. And they had two race tracks, 2 eighth-mile tracks side by side. They had the fast track and the slow track. And they just would rip cars down this thing. And I built these 2 cars, and he won the Chiefs Challenge from all the chiefs locally. The Highway Patrol that was based out of basically the Chips building up in LA, they came down with their Mustang to come and race us. And he came over, he goes, "Hey Shane, you want to give me a fresh run up?" I was like, "Yeah, come on back." And I was like, "Yeah, we got this." At that time we had a Crown Vic now, and the Crown Vic had 513 gears. We had this Allen intercooled supercharger on it. I can't remember what cams we had. I think it was Crowder cams at that point, and and man, that thing was fast, and well, for what it was, and it looked like a cop car, lights and all. So it was a Crown Vic 4-door type thing. And he got down there, and he wanted me to ride with him, and he cleaned their clock. So yeah, it was good. It was good stuff. Yeah, I'll never forget that.
Fun times.
Fun times.
Fun times. There was a Hot Rod Magazine article, I don't know how long ago, probably in the early 80s. A guy named Ron Filkins had a car called the Black Death. And he was out in your area. He was in Southern California. It was a black 57 Chevy.
Mm-hmm.
small block Chevy, tons of nitrous, like all of the nitrous that ever existed,
Yeah.
in a tunnel ram. And the car ran in the mid nines, and it was a heavy car. And it would bend ladder bars and rear end housings because it launched so violently, all that kind of good stuff, right? Anyway, the car eventually went to his son, and it got seized somehow, and the police themselves wound up with the car. And because they didn't know how to tune it, it got some kind of crate motor, and it kind of fell into disrepair. Now it's like some kind of rolling display for the DARE, the Drug Abuse Resistance Education Program.
Uh-huh.
But I always found that story interesting with the police and hot rodding. That's one of my favorite stories. But even though it didn't really end well for that poor car.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Patrick, if you send me an email, maybe that's you here. Send me an email to Slant Daily Garage Yahoo. Oh, and Ollie just sent me that thing, so thank you. If you send me, I'll send you over the recipe, and the recipe gives you part numbers. It even tells you power valves, which on your distributor, what springs to put in for the MSD, your oil pump. It gives you all the part numbers for everything, and so it was basically a basic blueprint I used to give to customers here. Buy this stuff, and we'll put it in, and we'll make it go.
Danny Boyd,
Big
I'll
Bill.
either send you that or I'll put it on my community tab. It's a very interesting read.
Oh yeah, okay. Where here right here, POA 38. Bit of tech. How much lift can a stock late 454 roller system take? Now, I do know that the what is the I would say the Gen 5, but it was called the Mark 5 and the Mark 6. I think it was 550, I think is what it is. I don't know off the top of my head. I'm going to give you the wrong number. I will remember that. That's in my notes out in the garage, but I don't have that off the top of my head, unfortunately. I'm sorry. I want to be specific. I want to give you the correct number. Oh yeah, Shane, that's not Poe racing. That's proper hot riding, right? It's the truth, but that's just what it was.
Danny Boyd there at 755 says most cops are car enthusiasts. I'll say, well, I'll tell you what. I remember, I could say all this because he's retired. He's long retired now. But the first time I ever got pulled over in my entire life was right after I moved to Blacksburg, and I got pulled over in a yellow 70 Dart Swinger, and the officer was a motorcycle cop, and he came up and he said, and this is just so long, I'm not wearing a seatbelt or anything. And he didn't even want to see my registration or any of my license, nothing. Now, this is just how laid back a traffic stop was 30 years ago. He comes up to my window and he says, yeah, you're not supposed to be running tinted license plate covers. So, if you change them out, that'd be good. But then he just starts talking about the car. And we talked about the car for about 15 minutes. Yeah, what's in it, and all this stuff,
Yeah.
And he just sent me on my way. Years later, I ran into him at Advance Auto Parts, and I thought I recognized him. He didn't recognize me because I wasn't in the car. But then I asked him about it. He said, oh, yeah. He said, I remember you and the car. I just wanted to see the car. That's really the reason he stopped me.
That's awesome. Big Belly Racing, does anyone make aluminum Magnum heads? Yes. Edelbrock does. Edelbrock makes an aluminum head. That's actually the part number. I got the part number right here. I think I do. No, it just says 360 Mopar aluminum heads. I don't know the part number off my head, but they do make it, and they flow really good on the exhaust side. They actually flow better than the LAs on the exhaust side, and so that's why I was taking advantage. That's even bigger split for the duration on the exhaust with the Magnum head, and just helped that thing carry way out the back door, so it never really fell off per se. Okay. First responder. Okay. I thought Carr was the only one that made those at the time. That was correct. I seem to remember it lost horsepower but gained torque higher. Okay. Yes and no. The reason being is because on those engines, they have 4 timing chains. So on this one, it did. So the timing chain comes off the crank and it runs the exhaust valve and then exhaust cam. Then the exhaust cam runs the intake cam. Here's the problem is that nobody ever degrees these. Two, whenever you put these things in, you have to put new sliders. So you have to put all the new plastic sliders on everything. So what happens is that they'll put these cams in there, and then everything goes super retarded because they have all this extra slack in it. So everything basically falls backwards. Also, too, when they put them on there and they think they're degreeing it, when you're degreeing the intake, remember any movement that you make on the intake now has to come from the exhaust. So then when you degree the exhaust and then you move the intake, you're basically just messed it. Excuse me, just messed it up. So what I would do is I would degree the exhaust first on this one, then I would degree the intake, and that would tell me how far I was off. Then I could move the exhaust in retrospect to the intake and then just take effect of that. But remember, you had to do this now. When you degree the cam, you do the exhaust, there's one. You do the intake, that's two. And then you got to back and do the exhaust, so that's three. Now you got to do the other. So you basically are degreeing a cam 6 times. That's if it's perfect. So then each time you do it, you have to degree it 3 times. So if you make any movement now, 6 just became 12. So literally, it is a big deal. And the reason why they seem to lose power is because nobody ever got them in there correctly. I fixed a lot of those. Also, too, many times they were a tooth off or too far advanced. So happened a lot. Oh, yes. Does anyone want a 97 360 Magnum? Absolutely.
Is that a trick question?
Yeah, that's a yeah, sure.
Let me guess. 38. My transmission used to be attached to it. I bet it did.
Is this your old engine, Wilburn?
No, that would be. I got the transmission out of this church van he junked out.
Oh,
and I bet that's the engine that was in front of it. That's my guess. If
Dude,
that engine had fit in the trunk of a '59 Chevrolet, I might have made him a deal on it.
Well, how far from where I'm at is this engine located? Just in miles?
It's in Nebraska.
That's a long ways.
It's up there. But he might put it in the back seat of his '59 Chevy this year. It always comes with a truckload of car parts.
Oh, you know what? Sure, I'll take it. No Name Nationals. You know, maybe we'll do a will it run on an engine stand at the No Name Nationals. You know what I mean? Or how about this? We get it there, we get it running, we put it in someone's car, and they have to drive it home. That would be kind of fun. I don't know. Just
it
talking.
Could happen.
Could happen. You never know. We'll see what. I do know that MMM would be kind of cool, stoked about that.
Yeah.
I bet those stock roller lifters will endure a lot. You know, I'm pretty sure you're talking about the Magnum. They actually do. Most of the cam lobes that I was putting onto these things were pretty soft to begin with, because they were driven on the street. They were not super fast acting, and the reason for that is because that's why I was running a high ratio rock arm. It makes up for the valve velocity when you have a low velocity type of camshaft. So I was making it up with rock arms, and I was not going crazy with the spring pressures because I was not RPM the crap out of these things. 62 to 6,500 was about it. And in fact, I think this last one, I think the big horsepower one made it at 6,200. So it literally is a street engine, and that's peak. So 6,500, plenty of overrun. And that's only if you really miss the shift. So, and people were running, into the, in a 3,000 pound vehicle, they were running, into the 11s with this setup. So, I mean, it was a decent, and you could get in this thing and drive it anywhere you wanted to go. I mean, definitely had some boogity because it's on a 108 with a 230 duration, but it sounded awesome. Did I miss one here? Let's see. Pull over, had a fireball, hydraulic cam. Oh, crane fireball. I remember those fireballs, man. That's awesome. I remember those ones. 66 Valiant. Oh, yeah. Yep. Yeah, you guys have heard me tell that story where I was doing 130 here in, actually was in Mississippi, and I got pulled over one morning on my slant 6. I wanted to see how fast it would go. It was going well over 130, and happened to get pulled over. Guy let me go because you couldn't believe it was a slant 6, and I knew I was going to get out of it, so I was talking cars. Come to find out that he is cousins, friends, whatever, with the guy that I work with at TCI, and this happened within like the first 2 months I was there. And by the time I made it there to TCI that day, They had already called ahead and said that, yeah, your new engineer, I just pulled him over. He was doing, you know, over 100 miles an hour in a slant six. And I pull up and they're all, yeah.
So speaking of pulled over, Damien said, I thought you were pulled over for running slicks. That was actually a few years after I got pulled over by the chill officer. The officer that pulled me over for running slicks was not chill at all. He got a report from the Karen across the street of speeding and reckless driving, which I was doing neither, but I had open headers on it. I had slicks on it. Gosh, I think I even had shoe polish still on the windshield. I'd had the distributor out of it. I wanted to just function check it, right? So I go around my neighborhood, and by the time I got back to my driveway, now 30 seconds later, I got cop rolled right up behind me. But he saw the slicks. There's nothing he could do. I'm sitting in my driveway. He didn't actually see me driving in the neighborhood. But that was that time. That was a few years later.
Yeah. The only reason why I like the Edelbrock Magnums is or just the Magnum heads in general. It doesn't have to be the Edelbrocks. I'm just saying that the Magnum heads in general is rocker arms, because you can save so much money with the just getting rid of the shaft rockers. Because I think what's a set of shaft rockers now? What are they, like $2,000? I think for
they're high. I don't know.
Yeah, and even the Harlan Sharp. Now there's companies out there who make inexpensive ones, but you're really getting what you're paying for. Where you can get a really quality rocker arm. That's a stud mount. And it'll work right on this. Plus, I do like the fact that the Magnum's rail is much higher, so that there's plenty of oil in there, and it's got the 10 bolts for the valve cover. So just that's the only reason why I seem to like them, is when you build an engine for a customer, you want this many oil leaks.
Yeah.
And that just helps.
I won't deny that the 10-bolt valve cover is better, but I've always thought it looked weird.
It does.
I'm one of those people.
No, you're right. You know, I do like a lot of the nostalgia stuff looks better. I agree. But some guys they can deal with the extra bolts if there's no leaks, and it makes it easier for them. So,
yeah.
Michael Schmidt, anybody weighing their car's four corners to improve handling, any cheap do-yourself available to do so? I have four scales, and I do this on every vehicle, 100%, so that way I can get the car set up correctly. It's going to be really important when I do the Desert Dart, when I get that one going, because that's going to be my road race deal. That's where that exhaust is going to go on too. But as far as do-it-yourself cheap ones, man, Summit's got a decent one that comes in a carrying case and everything. I don't remember the price on them, but they work really well. The only thing my only critique on it is I got the one with cables, because I didn't want to deal with like the Bluetooth thing, because I always have problems with that. If you decide to get them, get the one with the cables, but get the longer cables, because the cables barely are long enough for it to come out right in the middle. Like you have to run them underneath the car, and it has to come out like at the door. That's as long as the cables are. So get longer ones. Right. The officer couldn't believe it was a slant six car. He had to pop the hood, show him that just a 4-barrel headers on it, dual out the back. That's exactly the truth, because I had slant daily on the back of the window. He walked up and he says, the whole thing, do you know how fast you're going, and this and that, whatever. And then he was talking to me about it, and I told him, yeah, we just moved here, yada yada. And he asked me, slant six? I said yes. He didn't believe me. We almost argued that it was a slant six in there. And then I said, well, do you want to see it? And at that point, when I got out of the car and he goes, yes, that's when I knew I was getting out of the ticket.
Kind of like you lost a bet.
Pretty much. There's a guy on YouTube did a budget car weigh system. Okay, yeah. Seen over. Oh yeah, that is correct. Yeah, the stock lifters, 7K at 318. It really comes down to ramp rates. That's really what kills the lifters, is because it just cannot recover. So especially nowadays, especially at Comp, we have all these soft lifters is what they're called. That were basically just low acceleration, low velocity, where there's low shock, essentially. And so that way it will allow it to RPM. Plus now with the progressive rate springs, where you can have, like, say a conical spring, each one of those things just adds that much more RPM capability to it. Most lifters just fail as far as where they go flat, just because they can't fill back up with fluid. When you squeeze it out, when it goes over the nose, it just can't refill, take up the slack. Also, another reason why I always put them 20 thousandths off the bottom. So even if it does decide to go flat, you'll miss a shift or whatever, you're not going to lose 100 thousandths of preload. You're only going to lose 20. Dad bought it. Let's see here. For some reason my chat on this side keeps blipping up. So sorry. Okay, my dad bought a keyway. He made a change it every week. He would change 3 things before next race. He knew it worked. It didn't. My brother buried collectors stick on and off. Awesome. Okay. Yeah. See. I knew it would be one of those things. If it worked out, he'd have to get it running and put it in while we're at the No Name Nationals. I don't know if it comes to fruition. If it does,
you could do it.
Yeah,
I'd recommend doing it on Thursday if I was going to do it.
Yes, like get there Thursday morning.
Yeah,
right. You said Chevy rockers on the Magnum. So how do you correct push rod angle through the lift using Chevy rockers designed for fulcrum cut at different degree angles? Because the way it's set up with the push rod, you're already 11 degrees off anyways on the lifter. So it's going to come up through the head on a guide plate and it works just fine. There's a lot of companies out there that have Chevy rocker. I believe Comp makes them. I know that Crowder makes it. So you can put them right on. It's just a guide plate essentially, because the lifter's already set at such a crazy angle, 59 degrees. It comes up literally almost in the same spot. I did get a little behind. Yeah, let's see. Nope.
Dakota has a good comment here at 809.
Yep. Perfect. Go for it.
I used Isky anti-pump up lifters on my Lunati Voodoo Cam and my 455. They say they're the same for small block Chevy and Pontiacs, which I thought was interesting.
The band's going to be in a different spot. Small block Chevrolets are going to, and basically anything that's a BOP, Buick's Pontiac is going to have, the band's going to be a different spot. So you have to be really careful on how much lift on the Pontiacs, the Buicks, and the olds that you have, because you'll uncover that. So I'm going to beg to differ and say no on that one. Now, unless they made the small block Chevrolet band to where it's lower, so that doesn't happen. But I can tell you that you just be careful, and this is one of those things that it would be definitely a check thing. So I would put it in the bore. I'd measure on the fish mouth where that oil comes through, measure down to see how far that goes down. Put your lifter in the bore, go on the base circle, measure that up, and then go on the base circle again at the max lift and measure at the top to the edge of the lifter bore. Then just do some simple math to see how far that band is close. Because remember, even if it's 100 thousandths away, there's still a little bit of play in that. You're going to have, about 1,000 of play. Times that by 16, and that's how much oil you could uncover pressure in that system as a leak. So just know that.
Another takeaway from that too is a lot of your modern replacement and aftermarket parts will be made to sometimes satisfy 2 or 3 applications, whereas your older original parts might not have been at all, right? So sometimes you'll see a part that is a universal replacement for several different things. Like that lifter could be made that way. But that doesn't mean that you could take, one of your BOP and Chevrolets and interchange them just because the new replacement part might be able to satisfy both applications.
Yeah. Isky lifters was set at number 2K. Is he saying $2,000? Is that what that is supposed to say?
I don't think Dakota would spend $2,000 on a house.
Yeah, the first set of Lunati lifters were bad right out of the box, made all sorts of clacking noises, and got worse. Now, here's the thing about anti-pump up lifters, or the so-called ones. You're going to have a high-pressure chamber and a low-pressure chamber, and all it's doing is just allowing it to transfer oil from one chamber to the next little faster. That's all it's going to be doing, because you don't want it to. You want to be able to have it bleed off, because anti-pump up is exactly that. You have a check ball and a wafer at the bottom. At a high RPM, it 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 will fill up with fluid, and then it's going to have a hard time getting that fluid out as it goes over the nose. Here's a couple things too: is that if you set up a lifter, if you're so worried about anti-pump up, here's the thing you can do: is you can just do it at 20 thousandths down from the top. I don't recommend that, because if you ever over rev it and you basically collapse the lifter, you're going to have a problem, because the push rod's going to fall out. What I have always done is I will always run a little bit more spring pressure over the nose than what they want. So after you break the cam in, now this is just how I do it. Everyone has a different way, and this is how I've been doing flat tappet cams and hydraulic rollers for a long time. And I even set them up currently this way. If they're calling for 120, arbitrary number on the seat, arbitrary number, they're calling for 290 over the nose. I'll get as close to that 190 as I can, but I'll try to add about 20 to 30 pounds of over the nose. The reason for that is because I already know I'm going to over rev it. Two, the spring is going to settle. Once it goes through a few heat cycles, it's going to get lower. Also, too, that will help with technically the anti-pump up. And I always, like I said, you've heard me say this 1,000 times, put it 20 thousandths off the bottom, and you really will never have a problem with it ever beyond that. Also, too, if you don't run a shit ton of oil pressure, which you don't need 90 to 100 pounds of oil pressure, or even 80. You keep it in that 60 to 70 psi once it's rolling, but then when it's idling, it doesn't need to have all that. You shouldn't have any issues at all. It's just all set up. It really is what it comes down to. Shane, how much does that 360 weigh? Isn't like 5 something, John?
With accessories, should be about 525.
Yeah, 520. I was going to say 520, but yeah, it's right at that 500 mark. If it's all stripped down, just a long block, I believe it's right at that 500 pounds.
Andy says has a great example of such, where you have one replacement part that can service two, the AMC and the Mopar. Yeah, you could do that. You could, even though you couldn't use the Mopar lifter in the old AMC, the service replacement could work in both, because it's designed to oil through the push rod.
Yeah, where was that one at?
Unity Motorsports Garage, AMC and Mopar as an example of the lifter.
Oh, I don't.
813.
813.
And then First Responder Garage, correct. Just run them off the bottom, so that you don't have that problem. Run your lash from the bottom.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. I run 10 off the bottom. Yeah, even better if you can get them down to 10. I've never had an issue with 10 off the bottom. I always tell people my conservativeness with people set up in their measuring skills. I always tell them 20 thousandths off the bottom. That's the reason why too, when I tell them to set up springs, I'll tell them if it's a solid roller, 50 thousandths from coil bind. So that way, by the time you factor in lash, that gives them 70 thousandths. That's the margin of error. Technically, you want to have it at 30, so that way your running is 50 thousandths before coil bind. So
just to combine about 3 of these comments
Sure.
for Dakota here, what do you mean by that when you're talking about lashing them that way? Because we went through this a year ago in here, but it'd be a good time to resurrect that topic.
Sure. Oh, as far as on the hydraulic lifter?
Yes.
Oh, coming off the bottom. Okay. So where was the last one, so I could just put up on the screen? Okay, right here.
We'll get Dakota's, because he was asking the question itself. Yeah.
Okay, so what I mean by that is when you have a hydraulic lifter, the hydraulic has got a plunger in it. Typically, they're 120 to 140 thousandths of plunger movement. That's the actual hydraulic. Typically, you can get it anywhere in that preload, except for Fords, but typically GM and Chrysler, you can be anywhere in there, and the thing's going to run fine. What I'm talking about is that most people will tell you, like on a GM, they have a nut adjustment on. They'll tell you to you move the push rod till it stops moving, and then give it a quarter of a turn or half a turn, and that puts your preload in it. So you'll put it about 40 to 50 thousandths preload. So you're about just about halfway. What I'm doing is I will take that and I will run that thing all the way down to the bottom. So that way it's trying to open the valve. And what this is doing is you're setting essentially like a mechanical cam. You're setting lash, but instead of setting lash at the valve, I'm setting the lash inside the lifter. So basically, I'm bottoming it all the way out, and then since I know exactly that if it's a 20, a 3/8 by 24 fine, you just take the 124, divide it, and that gives you how many thousandths each turn. So it's about 42 thousandths. So I know that half a turn out, it's going to give me my 20 thousandths off the bottom. And then since now you're going to have, a really long adjustment, then you make up for that in your length of your push rod. So if you're going to say, if you put 100 thousandths in, you're going to get 100 thousandths longer push rod. So that way, when you put it back in, your cup now is back up in the rocker. So you don't change any of your focal points, your thrust angles on your rocker arm. So that's what I mean by putting off the bottom. And also when you're doing that, you take a lot of, you're kind of robbing Paul to pay Peter, because people are like, well, the lifter is going to be lighter and there's going to be less oil. No, yes, but you're going to have a longer push rod. So it doesn't really make up for it. But what you're gaining is that you just can't collapse the lifter at high RPM. If you ever miss a shift, you won't have any issue with it. And this is a trick that if you're running a hydraulic class, literally you take all the hydraulicness out of the lifter. It's called the cheater lifter. You run mechanical cam profiles, and then so that way you get all the advantage of mechanical cam, but technically it's a hydraulic lifter and there is no lash anymore out there. So that's exactly what it is.
So these people are talking about hollowed engines and trunks. As a person who's done a whole lot of that, I can tell you this: 38 POS Racing doesn't want to crush his trunk floor with an engine in it. I have a piece of plywood that I've cut into two pieces that fits like a jigsaw puzzle in the back of the CRV, and it's like a bed liner. So when I want to put it in truck mode, I just put in these two pieces of plywood that are cut out for the wheel wells and everything. They just drop right in there. And I've had an entire slant 6 and 2 transmissions in there at the same time. I've had a disassembled 341 DeSoto Hemi in there, complete. I've had lots of blocks and stuff like that. And the plywood is amazing. It distributes all the weight. And you get no damage at all. You even make little cutouts for your wires and stuff. So if you want to haul things in cars and SUVs that were never intended to be hauled there with no damage, you need to take the time to one time cut out your plywood bed liner. You can throw it in there anytime for that.
Yeah. What's funny about this, what he's saying right here, is that back in the 60s, superstock guys would put washers in hydraulic lifters to make solid lifters to cheat in superstock, and had to run in the car with that cam. Back in the mid 2000, was it 15, 16? I was working at Crowder, and I was working with this. The company was called, well, I don't know. I don't know if it wants me to say it, but he was in California and he had to move out of California just because of the EPA things were really kicking on him. But we were messing with. There was not really a good lifter out there for the Gen 3 Hemi to make 2,000 horsepower or 1,500, right? So I was telling him about this exact trick. I was like, dude, you can take that lifter out, you can shim them up, and then you can take that, and so that way you can make a short travel lifter instead of having to run it way down there. You just run it up on top. So until they came out with a decent lifter, that's exactly how every single lifter left his building. And then he was able to get it so he could run a stock style push rod ish as far as lengthwise goes. Right. So he didn't have to spend anything extra. He can run a stock lifter with these washers in it and make just ungodly amounts of horsepower with these things, obviously. So it's funny to see this, because it's like everything circles back. You're talking the 60s now, the 20 teens, So.
Yeah, there's nothing new under the sun. It's amazing when we see it come back. Like things we thought were dead and settled 10 years ago, they'll come back.
Oh, yeah.
We'll see them come back.
Oh, Kim's in the building. Hi, Kim. How you doing? Good to see you. So do you think anti-pump up lifters would work? I bought them because I needed a set of lifters and wanted to experiment. Here's the thing about those, is they have to go on the correct camshaft. So I remember you saying it was a Voodoo cam. Lunati just happens to be one of the manufacturers that is in my bubble. So if you Pulido, SPULIDO at edelbrock.com, send me the cam number and I'll tell you exactly what masters are on there. And then now did he say they were Isky lifters? Is that who he said they were?
I'm not sure. I think so. No, Lunati, I think.
Um, yeah, whoever made the lifters, if it's Lunati, I can tell you right now, I probably won't have any information on them. But if it's the Isky lifter, call them up and ask them how fast can you, what kind of ramp rates can you put on those, and spring pressures, because that all plays into account. And just know the only way to get anti pump up lifters to make the power that you want out of them is to put it on a dyno. Back in the day, they used to have these lifters called Rhodes lifters, and Rhodes lifters were basically, if you had a big camshaft, it just knocked some of the nuts out of the camshaft and allowed it to drive. Here's the thing, is you had to put those on a dyno because you could change the engine horsepower by 30 or 40 horsepower with a simple turn of each one of them, and everyone was slightly different. So I learned that right off the bat. So
Shane, they are Iskies.
oh, they are Iskies? Okay, yeah. So I would call up Isky and find out what they expect those put on there. Typically, whenever when people run those, I always like them to match the manufacturer. Spring, especially, to camshaft to lifter, because they all have to match, especially the spring to the lifter, to the ramp, spring to the camshaft, sorry, because of just ramp rates and how fast it's opening. Okay, see if I missed anything. They're talking about putting engines in. I moved a slant 6 in my slant 6 trunk. I to TCI, I can put 2 transmissions, take the spare tire out. I can set 2 transmissions right in that well. They wedge themselves in there nicely and they don't move around. Car gets a little tail happy, but it will fit.
My buddy Robert one time had the engine out of both his race car and his tow vehicle at the same time. So he took the trunk lid off of his 85 Cavalier. It was a blue, I still remember that car. It was a blue 85 Cavalier with like 360,000 miles on it. He drove that thing forever. And he went to Whitfield, which is, I don't know, about 40 miles away, and put in both the 460 short block and the 454 for his tow vehicle.
Nice.
So he had 2 big block short blocks in the trunk of this 85 Cavalier.
That's awesome.
And it looked like a squatted truck going down the road, but the trunk lid was completely removed. There's only way to get them in there.
Yeah, I had 2. I had a 400, a turbo 400, and a 904 in the back of my car, and it literally was on the bump stops.
Ooh.
Yeah, literally was on the bump stops. And you doing 70 like that, it does this number, you know what I mean? So
yeah,
I finally finished porting my 440 source heads. They turned out primo, considering it's my first time ever doing it. Now I'm back facing the valves. I got to tell you, back facing the valves, whenever someone does a slant 6, I know that you're talking about a 440 here, but I'm just giving an example that I can talk about with relevancy. On a slant 6, people do all these crazy things as far as porting them and doing all this. I can tell you that if you just do a cleanup on the bowl, back face the valves, that's good for 20 CFM. Then you can spend another 100 hours, $1,000 and get another 10 CFM.
Right.
So it's not worth it. So back facing the valves is a huge thing to do. Now it really helps in the upper RPMs, not so much down below, but really in the upper RPMs. So yeah. And slant 6, since you're especially on a 225, it's already underheaded to begin with. So any little bit helps. Okay.
Good work, Dougster. I'm glad that turned out good for you.
Okay.
Yeah, that's where Don is now doing his 440.
Oh, okay. I gotta tell you, I've been perusing some of the No Name Nationals. I've been going in there, and I really thank you guys for putting up at the hashtag No Name Nationals, because it makes it much easier to find. I almost wish we would do like hashtag No Name Nationals 24. We should
then it'll split it up 100 ways.
I know, exactly.
And we'll have the 20 and the 2024 and the 24 and the third and if we just keep the same one, all the new stuff stays at the top.
Yeah, I know.
And we've got over 12,000 videos under that, so that tag has some power behind it now because it hasn't been split up.
But what's good about it is that I've been kind of going through there, and there's people talking about, I'm going faster this year, and it's really awesome to go and see all the builds and just some people have gotten bit really hard by the drag racing
Yeah,
bug.
including Don.
I gotta tell you. And
Dakota
then,
doesn't know that he'll be back yet, but he will. He knows he
yeah,
wants to be back. And you know, Shane, I don't know how much you've thought about it, but you realize that you have had a direct effect on these guys and being able to go faster this year than they would have if they hadn't been
that's
learning
awesome.
from you on Wednesday Tech Talk Live.
Awesome. Well, that's the whole point of this, you know. So thank you. I hope I do my best. I really do. Um, it is work to come on Wednesdays, but you know what? It's rewarding. So, but thank you. So awesome. That's awesome.
Well, I thoroughly enjoy just getting the opportunity to be an interim and come in here and hang out with you guys, and it's always a blast.
Yeah. Oh, and I thank you for coming in. So I think it's awesome. It's you
It's
know,
fun.
yeah, 30 minutes beforehand, you're like, man, you know, I gotta get on there, and then I'm just like, you know what? I just gotta be myself. That's all
Yeah.
I gotta do, you know.
Once we hit live, it gets easy.
It gets easy. Exactly. You've been, me and the wife were talking about this. I've been doing this for almost a year and a half now, over almost a year and a half. And when it was just me and Dallas on his channel, and then I brought it onto my channel. But it's been a year and a half from the time, and it's gone fast. It's really gone fast.
It's been great.
It's been awesome. Drive well, 700
I want to
miles.
give a high five to Schweers and Gears there.
Oh, awesome. Okay, I'm going to get down to that when I
He's
need
got
it.
some great news. His $700 was already built for 500 horsepower by Mike's Transmissions in Lancaster, California. They were able to search their records back 20 years for a build list.
Wow.
So you're really lucky.
You know that I know Mike at that place in Lancaster. Like I know him. So yes, that is, if he built it, it's good. And that's just testament to having pen and paper, because that way you can open a file drawer, you know, and then, you know, there it is. It's not in some computer, in some hard drive of a computer that was lost. So that's awesome.
So this is kind of a weird tale to tell, but it reminds me of that. So last time I was talking, it's been a while, I was talking with John Cope about, we were talking about AA transmissions and over near Indianapolis. And he said that Rick, that's had AA forever, right? He said he's the kind of guy that has like this notepad by his phone. And he will take every, like he said, he probably has the minute of the day and what the weather was and everything, every part number. He's real meticulous like that, right?
Yeah.
Some people aren't, and some people are like, I don't know, looks like one I built. I know lots of different guys in shops, and they all operate differently.
Yeah. Colleen, what is the beneficial gasket matching intake head polishing exhaust ports? Okay. Beneficial on this, I would say just matching the gaskets to the intake to the head. So that way, because the whole, you can have all the head in the world, but the second you bolt that intake to it, you're going to lose CFM right off the bat. So the less CFM that you lose between the intake and the head, you're going to get better, the more beneficial from that. But polishing the exhaust is, that's really more of a longevity type of thing. I would, you know, as far as carbon deposits and whatnot, honestly too, just as far as heat transfer, there's a few other little things with that. But I say if you're going to put time into something, you can only do one thing ever. I would say intake to head, for the simple fact because you're not going to lose nearly as much CFM moving to the head. In fact, when I flowed my on my engine that's in the Cookie Monster, it flows like 340 CFM, I think, on the head. We ported the head to where once we bolted it up, it was 330 CFM with the intake bolted to it, which is, to only lose 10 CFM. That's amazing. Typically use 30 or 40 CFM. So that was typically, so it's pretty good. Let's see, my brother yanked out of. Oh yes. Oh, see, remember these days, me and my brother yanked out a 440 out of my Cornet on Friday. I put it in the Ram Charger to mud race Sunday, got second place, got wet, missed last minute, got passed.
Wow.
That is, see, remember those
I
days?
love it.
That's awesome. Like, hey man, I got a race. My engine's blown up. Let's just take one out of my car. I'm going with you. We're going to take this thing out Friday. We'll be ready to race Saturday morning. We'll get it tuned up. We'll race Saturday. We'll take it back out and put it back in my car on Sunday. Perfect. What do I owe you? Oh, exhaust gaskets. Not a problem. Oh, he's saying, yeah, you can polish the chamber on the top of the pistons. Yeah, you can do that too. Yeah.
There's all kinds of things you can do, but the question
Yeah.
is what do you get for doing them?
Yeah.
And it's like Shane said, you get your first 20 CFM for this much work and your next 10 for that much work. And
Yes.
it's really like that with a lot of things.
Yeah. And as far as the cost of it, just doing a simple roll on the intake to the head is really simple. That's an afternoon really to do it right. It doesn't take long at all. In fact, that's how I started doing my porting was just gasket matching for people. That was my introduction to it. It actually was on B series Hondas. Believe it or not, that was my very first ones. Okay, here we go. Shane, will my torque converter for my Chevy 704 bolt to the flex plate of my 350 Buick with a TCI adapter plate, or do I need a different converter? Okay, well, flex plate of my Turbo 350 Buick.
I don't know off the top of my head. That's
No,
definitely a Dallas question right there.
no.
I can't remember.
Is this a BOP transmission, or is this if it's not a BOP transmission, there's an adapter plate that you can bolt between the two, and then there's some washers that you put in between there and the bolts. But I've actually have done this because it literally bolts right on if you have the adapter plate. TCI, do I need a different converter? No, you should be fine. Oh, I know what he's talking about, the pilot on the pilot. See, I don't know about the pilot diameter. That's what I'm thinking. That's the only thing I don't know is the pilot diameter of a Buick. Tom, unfortunately, I don't know. That would definitely be a Dallas question on that one.
Yep.
Moving
But there's a
down.
specialist for everything in this community somewhere.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I mean, we had a Bricklin guy in here earlier. I mean,
come on, like really a Bricklin?
A Bricklin guy.
Oh, that's funny.
If you were taking bets on if you would have used the word Bricklin all day today, we'd have lost.
Yeah. Oh man, look at this. Right up my alley.
That's what I was saying right there.
Any suggestions for distributor recurve springs for a slant 6 with a mile cam, 100,000 off the deck, stock gear, home ported heads? Do you weld up advanced slots? Dude, I got to tell you, what's funny? I'm going to send you this video also because yes, you can weld them up. And then what I do is I weld them up from the outside in. So that way you're stopping it. You're not, the starting point isn't making the springs under tension. Here's a video, and I did this very thing right here. So every degree comes out to about 7,000ths of an inch. That's about every degree. The pin that goes in there is about 240 thousandths. So if you want 16 degrees, you just multiply 16 times the 7,000ths, add the 240, and that's how big the slot needs to be. Here's the crappy thing about it is those things suck welding. It's like impregnated with oil, plus it's been sitting in oil for a while. Heat it up, get it really hot with a torch, kind of burn it off, and then weld it. And then I just use a MIG welder. And I even show my settings on how I do it on that video right there. And I just tack. Where I get the springs from is now, luckily the O'Reilly's that I have still has the GM HEI recurve kits. Remember, we used to be able to get those. Mm-hmm. They have spring kits in there. And that's what I use is the spring kits from that. And then I believe I show I'm not sure if I show it or not, but I think it's the 6.5. It's for the Vacuum Advance is a 6.5, which comes out to about 13 degrees. So it's about 43 degrees. So what I do is I set mine up usually about 18 degrees to 16 degrees, depending on camshaft. With your mild cam, if you wanted to sound a little better, a little bit more, you can put it up for 16 degrees. So of cam. So that way you'd be about 14 degrees of initial, 12 degrees of initial in that range, 28 to 30 degrees of total. It's all going to be in by about 25 to 2800 in that range. And then the vacuum advance, you get the 6.5. It's typically in the 69 dart, and it's got a it's 4 points, but it goes right into yours. It'll work just fine into like a non-points distributor style. And with that, it give you about 30 degrees of vacuum advance, and it works awesome. But watch that video. Everything you need to know is right in there. I just basically skimmed the surface of it just now. But
Dust Devil Garage mentioned it. I was going to mention it too. An FBO plate. You can see if they have your application at 4secondsflat.com. That's Don Gould's outfit.
Yep.
And they do the FBO plates and springs. Our friend Just Mopar Joe is a dealer for FBO.
Yeah.
So
now, I have FBO
there.
plates. I do have FBO plates. Now, I'm not talking bad. I'm just telling you about my experience. The reason why I didn't like them personally is because my car goes down the freeway for 20 hours at a time at 70 miles an hour. So the weights are basically being spread apart all the time. Because it's a plate, it's a thin piece of metal. What's happening is that my advance kept getting more and more and more because it was pushing that, it was curving it out. Also, too, it was kind of digging into there.
And Scarlett mentions that. He says that it dents because it's kind of thin.
It does. And so if you just are around town, and mine's a daily driver, I drive this car every day. So if it's something that you're not driving everywhere, you can get that plate put in and be totally fine. For me, because I drive from Tennessee to the duct tape drags in Tucson, Arizona. I've been to Florida. I've done drag week in the damn thing. But for me, I wanted to have that slot welded in.
And mentioned John Cope is in the house. He's
Mr. John Cope.
And Scarlett the Four-Eyed Cuda is here.
Awesome.
And Mount Burns is talking about brazing them. Yeah, and brazing's it's worked for eons. But yeah. It's good to mention that there is an alternative with the plate. But like Professor P says, is that the plate isn't as durable as brazing.
Yeah, exactly. And believe it or not, I didn't braze mine. I MIG'd mine.
Yeah.
And I MIG'd it, and then I even show how I do it. Like after I MIG it out, then I can file it, and then I have a round file that's exactly 240 thousandths as far as the width. So when I drag it up and down in there, I can get my exact plate distance. So if I want 240 thousandths, boom, I can nail that number right there, 240. And I even show, I show you how to set timing on it. So that way you're not fiddling around with it, trying to get it started. I show you how to set it up, and then show you as far as how it RPMs up and all the advance that's in it and how it works. It's something I've been doing for years, but I wanted to make a video on it. So it works awesome.
Cope says 8-speed manual valve body. Could you imagine what the shifter would look like? Imagine if your triple P shifter ran into one of those British double-decker buses. That's what it would look like.
Yeah. There's actually already a company.
Clunk, 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 clunk. It'd be like an Eaton. It'd be like a double-decker versus an Eaton in a truck.
Yeah.
Maybe it would look like that.
Mr. Cope, there's a company. They're out of it's either Australia or England, and they take an 8-speed valve. Basically, it's a ZF8 HP or 70, 45, 90, and it's an electronic clutch, and they lock up the converter, and they use the clutches inside the transmission as literally like a manual transmission. So you can either one, use the clutch to shift it just like manual, so you can stall it. Two, you can have it to where you use the clutch to release it, and then you can just kind of shift it like normal. You can put it in drive, and it runs just like regular. You can have launch control in first, second, or third gear. You have RPM control. It's really an amazing piece. I'll send you the link. But yeah, it's pretty amazing. So
Dakota has a good question there, and you combine both of them.
Okay.
So he wants to try a different cam. So Dakota, is the point to try to get a camshaft that will help you live with that 11.5 to 1 compression, Or are you actually going to get the compression down to 11-1 and run a different cam?
I want to try some different camshaft. Those zoom heads, I'm going to be at about 11.5-1, and I'm going to try to get down to 11-1. So he's saying he wants it 11-1 before he even starts. If
Yeah,
that's
probably need to anyway.
yeah, you can get 11 to 11.5-1 is what I tell people. Is you can usually get a camshaft that will allow you to run pump gas. You're going to have to be, but it's going to be very, very critical to get the timing, everything right, fuel, everything. But you can do it. You're just going to be widening lube separation angles because you're going to want to get that cylinder pressure down.
And
And
Dakota, he said the latter. He wants to reduce cylinder pressure with the camshaft to get the dynamic compression down with the cam.
oh, exactly. Yeah. So widen the LSA, run a lot more duration at 50 on the exhaust.
Right.
So that's the simplest way. So 112 or greater. I would typically, but here's the thing though, is that you'll lose a lot of that power that you're gaining by having, I want to say the wrong camshaft, but having a camshaft that's not correct. This is what I tell people a lot. Sometimes when you go to that higher compression, you put a camshaft and you lose some of that squeeze and pop out of the damn thing. If you can get it down to 10.5-1, and then 10.5-1, you can pretty much run whatever camshaft you want. You can tighten up that LSA, and then with camshaft, you can trick it into being higher. So I know this is counterintuitive, but this is what. So if you have 10.5-1, you can run it on a 108 lobe separation angle. You will have a higher cranking compression, and the engine will think it's 11-1 running, but it's technically 10.5 because you're going to be changing things with the overlap. Plus, you'll get some of that torque back, and then you'll gain all that torque. So sometimes it might be a little better, especially when we're running with pump gas. And here's the thing too, is that remember, if it's 11-1 now or 11.5-1, when you get a little carbon in there, it's going to keep going up. So you're going to want to make sure that you're going to keep that thing clean. So typically 0.2 points, so 0.2 of a point is what I've seen on the max.
So Dakota, how do we know 11.5-1? Have you actually measured these chambers and your compressed gasket and all that good stuff? Measured your pistons volume and all that? And the reason I ask is because sometimes people will take the compression ratio off of their parts list, and you actually measure it can be a good bit different.
Wildly off.
Yeah, but he's saying that the LSA is already 114 to 116.
Yeah, most factory Pontiacs are. Yeah, most factory Pontiacs are 114 lobe separation angle.
Dakota says he's measured it.
Yeah. When I was building my Desert Dart engine for this, they were dropping pistons and rods right from Modern Muscle Extreme, and they said, "Oh, this thing's going to be like 11.5-1 or whatever with your 5.7 Eagle heads." By the time I did all the math, it came out to like I bought gaskets that were really thick, in anticipation for that, because it was theoretical and there was actual as far as numbers. Theoretically, it should have been like 11-1, so I got all these numbers to bring it down. I had to go and get some stock gaskets because I barely got it up to 10.4-1. So it's actually under what I really wanted, because the dome of the piston was not even the same as what they advertised. So just a heads up too. Sometimes also too, deck heights are going to be different than your where the piston is in the hole is going to be different. Sometimes, a lot of the times that the block has been decked, they make new pistons in anticipation of the block being decked 10 or 20 thousandths. So you're already starting 20 thousandths into the hole. So that's just something to be wary of.
So Unity Motorsports Garage here, Andy says he's 11.1-1 with a 259, 263 duration on a 108, has 185 PSI cranking compression, runs great on 93 with cylinder heads that flow like a sewer.
Yeah. But look at his cam, 259, 263. That's a big cam.
Andy, what is that? Is that pushing 700 lift too? Ooh, that thing's a monster.
Yeah, because he's closing that exhaust valve so late. I'm sorry, opening it up so early. I'm sorry. That's the reason why he's able to keep this in check. 185 1.5 psi. That's right on the edge of what I would consider cranking compression, right at 185, 190. You know what's funny about that too is that the Gen 3 Hemi 6.4 with the VVT on it, those things are up in the 220 cranking compression numbers. You
Yeah,
know that?
Andy says 674, 705.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah. My Gen 3 Hemi is 635 with a stock rocker. Yep. And on the Cookie Monster, it's 720, I believe is what it is. 724.
But it's like we
But
talk about, it's all relative with the kind of cylinder heads that you have.
yeah, exactly.
I
And
mean,
by the time you factor in lash and deflection and all that other stuff, it's you're going to lose about 20 to 30 thousandths just in operation plus another 20 here. So typically at running, 674 is going to be right in that 650 to 640 as far as running operation at RPM.
then when we want to feel better about any craziness we have, we think of Pro Stock running about 1.2 inches of lift and getting maybe 3 passes out of a valve spring.
Yeah. I'm running 89 octane at 100 at crank compressions 195 at 45 degrees of timing. Yeah, that means fuel injection. That's why. Yeah, there's that crossover. That Gen 3 Hemi, like I was just saying, usually is like 220 at cranking compression, which is just insane. But they can move timing all over the place. The carbureted car and a distributor is just basically a dumb animal. You're kind of limited on some of those things.
So Tom Brown's saying, what's better practice, piston at 0 with a 30,000th gasket or a piston down 20 with a 10,000th shim?
I would rather
Any
have
benefits either way.
For me personally, I like to have the 0 deck. Personally, when you start putting it 20 thousandths down, usually the gasket's going to have a bigger area. As far as, like, let's just say your bore is 4 inches, it's going to be like, say, 4/100, and a 30 thousandths gasket. Typically, when it's 20 thousandths down into the hole, the bore is going to be a much smaller bore, and then you're going to have a gasket there, so you're going to have a ledge. Typically, that's not what I want. So that's either way, you probably wouldn't. On a street car, you would probably never notice it. On a race car, you probably would never notice it. On a nitrous car, you're going to notice it. That's where you're really going to notice it. Maybe also too in a not necessarily a turbo car, maybe a supercharged car, but a nitrous car, definitely you will definitely notice it. But for most racing applications, you probably never notice it. It's just how I like to build things. Man, we're already at 8.
I know, time has flown.
Wow. I just happened to look. I was like, yeah, I wonder what time it is. Man,
we have 8 minutes left. If I may, I'd like to plug something coming up on Friday.
I'm telling you, I was just going to wait for the Cornhusker, man. I was kind of looking at that. So yeah, plug away, man.
Did you see the thumbnail? So we do this every once in a while. This will be the second one we've done formally with, you recognize the commenter, Thumper, the sweaty fat guy. Thumper. He is going to be my guest on Friday, and he is an ethanol fuel specialist. He makes it, he modifies for it, all kinds of applications, and it is always a fascinating conversation with Thumper. So if you have any questions about ethanol fuel, I've put up a community post. Please put them there, and we'll make sure to ask Thumper any of those. You can also ask in the chat, but if you have a question that's a little more techie or whatnot, or you just want a more detailed question, you want to put ahead of time, put it in the comments of that community post, and we'll make sure. But it's going to be a great time on Friday. If you're interested in ethanol fuel, that's one you'll want to see. It was a very informative live last time, and we're fortunate to have him offering to do it again.
So I just sent a link. I just put up a link for it right there. I actually had it tagged because I thought it was the coolest thumbnail you ever.
Did you like the thumbnail with the ethanol molecule there?
Yeah, I did. I looked at it. I was like, John actually got that right, because that is awesome.
Yeah. We talk about the difference between ethanol and methanol, and all that good stuff. So E85 versus E100, checking the moisture content, what he prefers to make it out of, all that stuff. So it's a very interesting live stream all about ethanol fuel.
you know what? He just gets a better thumbs up right from me because right there, the bottom picture, it is a tunnel ram engine. And is that a Pontiac?
Yes, it's a Pontiac. I can't. I was going to put that up on the screen, that thumbnail.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, but anyway, check it out. Yeah, the thumbnail kind of, and he gets picture of Thumper in there too, which is very uncommon to see the guy. But we'll
Yeah,
have him on Friday. Be a great time.
Yeah, I was already looking ahead so that way we can kind of plug it. And I saw this and I was like, "Ooh, this is awesome!" So yeah. So anyways, there's a link. Obviously, John Wilburn on his channel Friday at 7 p.m. Central Time.
And don't also a week from right now, we're going to be talking about the new. They'll be released on January 31st on the Wednesday. The new monkey bike class, the new rules for monkey bike.
And we're going to make it fun. Remember, fun and safe.
It'll still be safe, but it's going to be fun. And we're going to be talking about the tech that went into the rules for monkey bike.
And why we did things. And
if you're interested in tech, it doesn't matter if it's the tech of a 6-cylinder or top fuel. Or tech is tech when you're into tech itself.
Yes.
So it's cool. It's cool stuff. So we'll be all about that a week. So anybody you know who is in the monkey bike class, wants to be in the monkey bike class, that's a live that they want to catch Wednesday, a week from right now, January 31st, 7 Central, Slant Daily Garage Tech Talk Wednesday.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome. I'm excited. So I get to do something for the No Name Nationals. Yeah, right. Here's funny thing. Here's one of my stupid knowledges about a Pontiac. So my brother was a big Pontiac guy. A Pontiac engine is allegedly a 301. Here's the beautiful thing about a Pontiac is you'll never know because they don't have big blocks. They don't have small blocks. They have Pontiac. It is one.
Yeah.
When I worked at a little wrecking yard, people, they would do circle track racing with Pontiacs because they would go get the 4-cylinder heads for that because they had to run stock stuff. So the 4-cylinder head would be able to bolt right onto a Pontiac head. They had the exact same of that era, but they were closed chambers. So you could get like 14-to-1 compression or whatever it was out of a Pontiac engine with just the head change. Now you lost a little bit of cam flow, but then you can just make that up with camshaft. So anyways, it was just a little stupid tech there. So anybody who had a Pontiac and they showed up at the street races, be wary at the time because it was like, well, you can't really tell. Is it a big block, small block? You never know. The only thing I knew is that I'd looked for the 6X. Everybody knows that, right? You're looking for the 6X. Is it 6X head?
Yeah, everybody has their term that they look for, right? Every make and model. With Pontiac, you're looking for the 6X head.
That's right.
For a small block Chrysler, you're looking for the X head so that you can pay more, get something rare that doesn't flow any better. But you want the X on it, right?
Yeah.
The double hump head, there's always some unicorn language.
Right.
LD 340 intake.
My Trans Am's got the 6X head. Speaking of that, and this will be the last little thing. I've said this before, but this kind of ties into this. On a Mopar, you can tell what the engine block is right on the side, right? They'll have either a 1 or a 0 or a 6 or whatever it is, right? So on what I used to do is I used to take those, grind those off. God, man. So then on a 318 would have a 1. So I would take that off and I would use JB weld and make a 1.
Yeah.
On the side of the block, I literally would take out the 3, the 6, and the 0, and I'd put a 3, 1, 8. So, I'd leave the 3, but I'd make a 1 and an 8 out of JB weld.
Yep.
And then you can grind it down, paint over it, and it looks factory. And if you knew what you were looking for in an oil pan between a 360 and a 318, you could tell. But most people would just see like a harmonic balancer, like a neutral balance harmonic balancer. They wouldn't know any better. But
I'm looking for the width of the motor mount on the driver's side.
See, that's the kind of stuff. If you knew what you're looking for,
right.
But if you didn't, on the oil pan, the width on that is definitely another one too.
That's right.
So it's little things like that. But I used to run it's just a 318, No.
So when my buddy used to do this stuff, he would take iron filings really fine and grind them up in an epoxy solution
Yeah.
so that a magnet would even stick to his bogus numbers.
Yeah.
Except he did it. He did stuff like that with transmission cases for the round track guys around here.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I love that. It's Smokey Unique-esque type stuff right there.
Yeah. And I would grind it down a little bit so it would look like casting flaws,
Yeah.
and then you hit it with paint, and then, and then if someone's looking at it, they're looking through the fender well, because my dart had fender well headers, right?
Yeah.
So you could see the side of the block and see what it was. If you had a flashlight, you could shine it in there, but it would be casting just a shadow, and you would see 318. And at that time it was a 408. It was a, because I had one of those. I got one of the very first cast cranks in the damn thing.
I'm a sucker. I really ran a 318.
Yeah. Well, you could make the 318 run just literally nearly as fast, but I didn't have the funds to do it at the time, where I just wanted the cubic inches right off the bat because it was just easier. And for street racing, it's just a 318 with some nitrous, and they were just never, whenever at that time, if you saw a small block Mopar, the first thing you thought of was 400 horsepower. That's it. Really, that's really what you thought of, because that's all you could really get, especially if you have cast iron heads. When the Magnums came out, that really kind of changed some things. And then when that crankshaft came out, that inexpensive crankshaft, it really changed things, but people hadn't trickled down quite a bit yet. And so when you had the 4-inch arm crankshaft, some really good Magnum heads, they're still thinking 400 horse, and you're making 500 plus foot-pounds of torque, plus the 250 shot of nitrous on top of it. So, yeah.
Well, you remember going through the Summit and Jegs and PAW catalogs, and you'd see all these listings for Chevrolet, then a bunch of listings for Ford, but not as many. Then that was it.
Right.
That was it. There was no Mopar and Pontiac and AMC and all of this.
No.
It's come a long, long way.
Yeah, Mopar had its own section. Like literally, there would be, Chevy, Ford, and then you had to go to where it said Mopar Performance in the very back of the book, and it had a little blue label, and it was literally right next to the toys. Right?
Yeah.
It was, there it is.
You get the direct connection porting templates, that kind of stuff, right?
I still got those, man. I still have those. Yeah. It's like 4, and it goes, in like this, and I remember those.
I saw a set at a swap meet a few years back, and I knew what they were. I don't know if everybody walking by knew what they were, but I almost got them just for nostalgic purposes. I just thought it'd be cool, but I passed.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, it's 9 o'clock, and once again, thanks for showing up. And thank you for John. Bravo for coming out.
It's been a blast. It's been a blast hanging out with you guys.
And coming and sitting in while Mr. Dallas is taking a vacation. So once again, really appreciate it. And we're doing this for you guys. So if there's any questions or anything and we didn't get to it, slantdailygarage@yahoo.com. I can't remember who it was who was going to send me I think it was Dakota. If you send me the Voodoo Cam specs, I can tell you what it is. I can figure it out, but I can't guarantee anything beyond that because I don't know the specs of the lifter, but I'll do my best as far as getting you acceleration and ramp rates of that cam, because I have access to it. So
next week would be a great time to bring your tech questions about single cylinder and the small type stuff, because that's going to be probably the theme of the live. So a good
definitely
time for that kind of stuff.
Yeah, right. All right, guys. All right, once again, you guys take it easy, and you guys have a great week. We'll see you soon. And don't forget, Friday on John Wilburn's channel, it's going to be awesome.
The ethanol special.
That's going to be awesome. All right, take it easy, guys. All right, have a good night.